Hello everyone, this is Goose, back at it reviewing some more movies. And you might be like, hey, he's not completely flustered at the beginning of this video. And you would be right. I am in a very good mood, because today, we are reviewing a good movie. I was wondering what I should review this week, and there are a few movies on the agenda. But today isn't about those movies. Today, we are reviewing, in my opinion, one of Illumination's crown jewels, if not one of their only crown jewels. And you all have heard of it. I know it because if you've been to a store, you've heard of this place. If you've been in public, you've heard of this movie. If you've been anywhere outside your house, you've heard of this movie. If you have a little brother, you've heard of this movie. And we are reviewing Despicable Me, the first one. I don't want to get into the sequels because I have reasons. So yeah, let's get into this movie, which actually made me tear up at some points because, unlike Ugly Dolls, they did a good job of making me care about Gru, and the kids, and even the antagonist, the villain. Well, the villain, because the protagonist isn't really a hero. He's a villain, but he's kind of a hero. You know what, fine, let's get into it. So for the plot of this film, Gru is our main character, and he is a supervillain. He's the kind of guy you would expect out of a lone wolf. He's himself. He doesn't need anyone else in his life besides, his companion Nefario and his millions of minions. Those freaking minions. So, at the beginning, we learn that the villain, Vector, yes, that Vector, steals one of the Great Pyramids in Egypt, which goes down as the most appalling crime of the century. And this is when a ring at the door arrives, and Gru meets 3 orphans, Margot, Edith, and Agnes. And I just want to say, I really like how they had these unique names. Like, I've never met any girl named Margot, Edith, or Agnes. If you have, then that's cool, but I have not. I haven't even heard of these names before this movie, so yeah. And he doesn't really grow interest to them until later on in the plot. And since Gru's main goal is to be the greatest villain of all time, he comes up with an even better plan. To shrink and steal the moon, by flying up in a rocket. Now you might be thinking, the moon, that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard, and you would be correct. If you steal the moon, bro, there are no tides, no waves, no nothing. There's nothing for the wolves to howl at, there's no light at night, it's just pitch dark. Not my nose. It's just pitch dark, and yeah, the moon's very useful. So, he wants to fly up there in a rocket and shrink it. Very genius. But before you build a rocket, you need to obtain the millions of dollars for the parts. So he goes to the bank, and we meet Vector, this villain that looks pretty childish and makes machines more unnecessary than Doofenshmirtz, like the squid launcher and the piranha launcher. So Gru gets declined after the head of learning realizes that he doesn't even have the ray. And that's pretty funny. I like how Gru just went in, he was just like, you know what, I'll just act like I have it. Maybe he won't even acknowledge the fact that I don't have it, and maybe he won't ask about it. It's fine, I'll just say I have it. But he did, because he's smart, and he realized Gru didn't even have it yet, so Gru needs to get the ray, and then they'll talk. So, since the 3 orphans sell cookies with the profits going towards the head of their orphanage, they stop at Vector's house while Gru is watching. Basically, Gru's new plan, this is so bad, Gru's new plan is to adopt the girls just to use them to sell Vector cookies. Little would Vector know that the cookies are super intelligent robots who would cut a hole in Vector's vault, allowing Gru to take the shrink ray. Gru realizes that there's actually some fun in being a good parent after taking the girls to the fair, which they had to beg for, and this was probably by far one of the funniest parts of the movie. The only reason he took them to the fair was because he thought there was a ride there called the Goodbye that he could put them on, and it would send them to a nice place. And if I sound like I have a cold, I don't. It's just my sinuses are being a fat John, so yeah, sorry. And yeah, he takes them, and he realizes that it's actually, pretty fun. And so Gru executes his plan. He takes the girls to Vector's. The cookie robots succeed. He manages to get out in a clutch move by the sharks in Vector's floor. He has the most dope villain base, I'm not gonna lie. And yeah, so once he obtains the shrink ray, he realizes that he and the minions are in mass amounts of debt because he's been taking out all these loans for these machines and these missions, and he has no money to even build the ray because the boss declined Gru's second offer as soon as he got the shrink ray because the girls were being annoying and so were the minions. So yeah, that's kind of why he didn't, succeed in getting the money. So he had no money to actually pay for this because the girls ruined the meeting with the bank boss. So he sold everything in the lab. He sold all of the furniture, all that stuff in the lab to build the rocket on that budget. And so he built it, he launched up, and he got the moon. And he chose his greed over his need. In this case, the moon being his greed over the children, the need, because he took the children and basically unadopted them. He sent them back to their orphanage, which is the most evil thing someone can do, but he gets better. I did not like Gru in this moment, but I could tell that he had a lot of regret on his face, and he thought there was not much he could do, but he could have just, taken him in, which probably would have been the smarter thing to do for himself. And yeah, so he gave him up to the slave dungeon that is their orphanage, and Vector steals the girls at their dance recital, and Gru gets the moon stolen from his car, by none other than Vector. And so Vector has the girls and the moon. But little does Vector know, and little does Gru know until Nefario comes in and clutches up, is that the bigger something is, if you shrink it, there's gonna be a less amount of time that it will stay it'll stay shrunk. So if you shrink a bottle of Gatorade, it will probably last, I'd say maybe a week or so. But if you shrink the moon, which is millions of bottles of Gatorade, if not billions, then yeah, it's not gonna last that long, maybe a few minutes. And it did. So Gru saved the girls after Nefario clutched up and got him in a ship, and the minions clutched up with their minion chains. I would say human chains, but they're minions. And yeah, it was pretty funny. So and Vector realized finally that the shrink effect lasts shorter compared to the size of the object. In this case, let's just say he boomed. Gru became a good father. Vector got pooped on the moon, to quote Vector. I don't like the word poop, but he said it, so yeah. And yeah, he's stuck on the moon. Gru's a good father now. He loves the girls, and it ended nicely. Well, yuck. This movie did a really good job of making me understand the characters. The method of introducing characters through backstory and regular life has to be done right, and this movie had no wrong in that department. This movie did a really good job of introducing Gru, and it made me feel sorry for the villain's failures. So, Gru had a mom, and his mom did not really care about Gru. She didn't care about anything he did. In fact, he built a freaking rocket. He built a rocket. A functioning rocket. But not like the professional ones that can last days in space. But he did build a rocket. It shoots up in the sky, can break the atmosphere and all that. And all his mom said was, meh. So, if my mom says meh to me after making such a good accomplishment, there's gonna be no motivation for me to keep going. So, I felt really sorry for Gru, and very good for him that he kept pushing. And so, yeah, they did a really good job of introducing Gru. And Vector had a rough life before his villain days too. The banker of the evil bank was apparently his father, and Vector hasn't been really making his father approve of what he's doing because of his squid and piranha launchers and all that, his unprofessional stuff. And Vector made a promise that he would get that moon, and he did, but it went kaboom, so yeah. And the girls had a rough life with Miss Hattie in the slave dungeon of the orphanage, and everybody just had a rough, turbulent life in their past, and it was just so bad to watch these backstories. It was good, but it was so, bro, it made my stomach growl, dude. I cried. I started tearing up. It was good stuff. And so, yeah, they were going through a tough time, and then once Gru adopted the girls, their life went from better to when they were adopted and were being fed to worse at the point where Gru unadopted them to best, where Gru realized that being a father is really fun and he is that kind of person. And I really like that. I love the character development in this movie. Gru went from an entitled villain to a loving father. Nefario went from a stuck-up assistant, and I don't blame him. So, like, if you're the assistant of a supervillain, and your boss says, I want to take the moon in this rocket, okay? And you're just like, alright, let's get this done. And if your boss is not really paying attention, he's taking care of these children, then you'd be like, hey, isn't this my job? Like, if you're gonna do this, and then you're gonna blame me for not getting any work done, it's because you didn't help. So you're not helping me here, Gru. So that was pretty nice. He was stuck up, and then he got nice and loose to the point where he realized Gru didn't need to be a villain. He was like, you know what, I don't need to be a villain either. So he joined in on the fun. And I really appreciated that element in this movie. And yeah, not really much else to say about it from my personal thoughts. Very clever writing, actually. That's what I wanted to say. The lines in this movie were hilarious, especially when Gru, quote, flattered Miss Hattie by speaking Spanish. He said, like, I'll put it in, like, Shakespearean, like, thou art en como burro, or something, and it means you look like a donkey, and I knew burro meant donkey, and I thought it was just gonna be since it was Illumination, I thought it was just gonna be a joke where it would be like, oh, that's so flattering, because she didn't know what Spanish was. It's a cliche girl thing. It was pretty funny. And then she came back and whacked him in the face with the Spanish dictionary and said, I know what you said, when she was taking the girls back. It was so funny. And yeah, that was great. And yeah, that's what I think about this film for my personal thoughts. But for everyone else and how the movie, the box office, all that. So for the reviews, I thought this would have an 8.6 out of 10 or an 86% before I checked. And I thought it would have made $400 million in the box office. That was my estimation. Now that is a bold guess, and that's pretty high compared to other movies. But this movie was heavily advertised. Steve Carell was in it, Miranda Cosgrove. They had a lot of good people in this film. So I thought, you know what? Yeah, it could have made this much. That's definitely possible. And I was wrong. I was 5% high on the rating. It got 81% on Rotten Tomatoes, which still isn't bad. That's pretty good. And it made $540 million. And it only cost $69 million to make. Noise, that is very nice. But that is a huge profit, just from the movie alone. We're not counting the merch. The merch probably made hundreds of millions of dollars as well. So this movie was a great success. And that is a great profit, especially for what the time was an original film. This was an original film. They didn't really think about making any sequels. But sadly, this was one of the only great things Illumination put out to me. Everything else is just meh. But to summarize, this movie was very good and had the numbers to back it up. Not saying all good movies make a lot of money, because movies like Napoleon Dynamite don't even reach the 100 millions, but it was a great film, had great numbers, and yeah, I really liked it. So let's conclude this movie. When I rewatched this movie, the last time I fully watched it was when I was 3 in the theater. It was hilarious, but I wasn't laughing at the right things. I was laughing at the little kitty humor. Not the person who understands words humor. I wasn't laughing at that. I was laughing at the little pee-pee, poo-poo jokes. Those little jokes they had in for the little kids. But if you haven't watched this in the age where you can just understand nice, subtle jokes, you should. Go back and rewatch it. It was really nice. Though the fact that you just watched a video about me spoiling it doesn't really help your enjoyment if you rewatch it. Just do it. Just do it. It was really nice, really funny. Very conflicting. It was very conflicting. I loved that part. I loved that Illumination was able to put out a nice conflicting movie, and I wish they were able to do that with their other ones, but sadly, they weren't, and we can only hope for the future. So yeah, and you have a lot of time to watch it, because we're in quarantine, so yeah, the stars are aligning in your favor, so go watch it. And yeah, that's kind of all I have, so thanks for watching. Be sure to like, share, and comment, and subscribe for more. And if you want to watch more content, check out my other videos or watch my friend's segments. I'm Goose from Scapegoat Productions. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one. If you want to watch more content, check out my other videos or watch my friends' segments. I'm Goose from Scapegoat Productions. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.